Welcome to Shut Up and Say Something. I am your host and creator of the show, Deedre Daniel. This podcast is all about how to live a fascinating life, and we're learning how to do that one interesting conversation at a time. We try to stay away from discussing politics, religion, and the ad nauseum topic du jour, but anything else is fair game. And today I am speaking with Beth Ziesenis. She is an author, speaker, and nerd. She is here to help you filter through thousands of apps and gadgets to find the perfect tech tools for work and home. And she has been featured on many best speaker lists and has written a whole shelf of books on apps. And I met Beth. And Beth, I don't know if you realize this, but I met you at an ASAE Great Ideas conference a long time ago. You were speaking at the Broadmoor Hotel in Colorado. Her presentation was the only one I took notes in. She was just packed full of all of these tips and tricks and tools. And I thought, I have learned so much from this woman. And you just left this big impression upon me sitting in your audience. How many years ago?
Well, gosh, I mean, that's more than I got ever from any date I've ever had. So that is very flattering. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're quite welcome. So today is all about tips, tricks, and tools to make your life easier. I also asked Beth to give us some fun Halloween apps since we are recording in October. So welcome, Beth.
Well, thank you for having me. And you have impressed us so much. I don't know if your listeners are aware, but you were the keynote, finish it off, top it off speaker at Non-Doozapalooza, and you blew them away.
Oh, that's really nice of you to say. That was all custom comedy. So I didn't know how the jokes would land. And so I was a little bit nervous walking in there. And I was so relieved when I heard laughter, and not at me, but, at the jokes. So I have been struggling for the perfect title for this show. And I don't know if you realize this, but I always try to keep them simple. So I try to come up with something that's more relevant to the show. And I was thinking it would be funny to replace like famous songs that are about butts with the word app. So what do you think about this? Baby got apps.
Hey, yeah.
Okay.
That's growing on me. App bottom girls, you make the rockin' world go round.
So I'm trying to keep it at 2 or 3 words max. So I was thinking like tap that app.
Again, more than I ever got on a date. I'm good with that.
What about this one? Appylicious.
There we go. Yeah.
You like that? Now this one's 4 words, all about that app.
I'm there.
You like that one?
I'm there. Yeah. I just saw Postmodern Jukebox in concert. And they sing one of their famous songs was the redo of All About That Bass. So that speaks to me. And I also am all about that bass. So all of that goes together.
Well, you could do a parody. You could sing like, I'm all about that app, no paper, perhaps.
But I'm afraid that I might need to twerk. And
that's okay.
My husband tried this in the kitchen. We tried it in the kitchen one day, and it so did not go well. I don't think the cats have recovered.
Do they need therapy, you think?
From this moment? Yeah, it wasn't so good, really.
Well, I also noticed that you have in the title of your book, it's about app opportunities. And so her book is Nerd 365, a year of app opportunities to upgrade your life. And that's part of what we're going to talk about today. So you have 365 different apps.
That book has more than 450.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, wow. And that was my attempt to keep it short.
There's just not enough days in the year to match it up.
It was fun.
Oh, wow. So I have a thing for awards. I don't know if you know this about me. And I noticed that you have won like Best Speaker or Best Speaker of the Year awards, which are very impressive. But I'm really impressed with your McDonald's Best French Fry Award.
Oh, my God. I'm so glad you asked. Nobody ever asks me about the actual thing. It is right here.
You have a trophy.
I have a this is the only trophy. This is it.
That's amazing. All right, so tell me about that. How did you win this?
I worked at the McDonald's in my hometown and during high school, and I worked like 30 hours a week. Like
that's a lot for a teenager.
Yeah. And so they had this big competition where several stores, all with franchisees or whatever, the staff from each store went to different stores and they were graded and they had competitions, right? So there was a drive-through competition and that kind of thing. And one of the competitions was you had to make the best French fries And that was my only competition, my only area that I was doing. And I had to study. It was like 3.5 ounces per. And to make the French fries, you're supposed to shake with the scooper a certain way so that they all stand up. And then there are smalls and larges, and you get them in there. You have to get the right amount. You actually, according to the procedure at the time, you had to weigh them each time, which nobody does. And you had to salt them in a certain way. And I studied the videos, and I studied, and I practiced, and I won. They said it was close.
You're a French fry nerd.
Well, I'm a French fry eater now. But back then, like, I was dedicated, and seriously, I came in like 6th in one running race where there were literally 7 people. And I did get a blue ribbon for a stained glass piece one time at a fair. But trophy wise, and I have won some awards, like awards. They're back there.
Your speaker awards.
Yeah. But trophy wise, this is it. And I am so proud of it. And it's fallen apart 6 times, and my husband keeps putting it together.
I love that. But I do believe that's when French fries at McDonald's tasted the best.
Seriously.
They're not as good as they were before. I think they changed the fat.
They did. They're supposed to be more healthy now. Whatever.
Yuck. No.
Animal fat and bad ingredients tasted good.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. I'm one of those people. I don't think you should eat French fries every day, but if you're going to go in, go all in. Like, whatever it is, go all the way. Last week, I ate at this little diner in Lakeland, Florida. It's called Reese Cliff. And it's so old. They have these black and white pictures where customers used to show up on horseback to this place. I mean, it's such an old place. And I was eating their French fries. I'm like, these remind me of the old school McDonald's French fries. And since they're not a franchise, I bet they're using all the bad stuff. And they probably won't admit to it, but they were so good. Took me back. And I thought, I am going to talk to someone who won the French fry award. Well, quite excited.
And a little known fact, which I don't know if it is a fact anymore, but the managers who had been to McDonald's, and they had been to Big Mac U, which was a thing. The managers taught us how to make fried onions in there. You take the pancake batter and you put them on the onions, and you make your own fried onion rings in the French fry oil. And like, they taught us all these little extra tricks for off menu things. Now it's trendy to be off menu, but they were like really off menu. And it was only things that you could do if you spend too much time at McDonald's.
So now if I go to McDonald's, can I get these onion rings? Is that the
they
secret
were
menu?
Illegal for us to do even in the day. So I doubt it. But
gotcha.
I spent a lot of calories trying out being a part of the team.
All right. So let's talk about those apps. First off, how many do you have on your phone?
200.
Oh, so it's interesting. You've found other apps that you like, but you don't put all of them on your phone.
No, I put them on, I take them off. I put them on, I take them off.
I see. Okay.
And sometimes I forget, but I try them out all the time. There's a little area in an iPhone that shows you the recent downloads. The recent downloads are like always super full in mine.
I wonder what that says about you, because I know there are a lot of companies that'll create profiles on people based on what apps they have on their phone. And here you are going through so many of them and taking them off like a cheap t-shirt. So I'm sure they're wondering who you are and why you're doing this. Yeah. You're in that special bucket.
I limit a lot of my, the privacy. Like, I don't let Apple suggest things to me, and I probably should, because they probably think I'm unbalanced with the number and the types I do, but I try to hide my activity as much as I can in most categories so that they don't know.
I see. How much time a day are you dedicating to finding apps and testing out apps, or how much time a week?
Oh, that is a great question as well. I think I'm going to estimate it as always.
Okay.
For example, yesterday was Sunday, right? So I'm doing a session on AI that I'm recording and doing these little bits on. And I got caught up in the metaverse and what that means and the different VR platforms. And so yesterday, my husband, I have an old VR headset, one of the first ones that was kind of commercially available.
Oh, the real bulky, sexy ones.
Yeah, well, none of them are very pretty, but Oculus Go was one of the first ones. So I have the first affordable one. I have that one because it was so old. I just bought a new one yesterday as well. But my husband was watching football, and I told him I was working, and he came in. He said, "I just saw you in there doing this with your glasses on. And I was like, yes, this is my job. I have to try out the street beats or whatever it is. Boom, 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 where I'm fighting off little things that are flying at my head.
Right.
And it really is constant. And like this morning, I was flipping through some news and there was a new tool. I think it's called Interior AI, that you take a picture of a room in your house and it reimagines that room based on a whole bunch of ideas and concepts. So interior decorating with AI. And
I love that.
So I was able to take a picture of my den, and I'm walking around the house and I'm drinking my coffee and the cats need to go out and be fed. But I'm like, I'm busy. This is work.
I wonder if they could replace perhaps a spouse off the sofa with a different one.
That could be. And there's a tropical setting. So maybe it is a spouse with no shirt on.
Right.
Drink.
Like, Brad Pitt's on my sofa.
Yeah.
Look at that. Are any of these password apps safe? I know that there are these apps out there that'll hold all of your passwords for you, and I'm afraid to use any of them because I worry that someone could hack into that particular app and then, my life would be ruined like Sandra Bullock in The Net. Are there any that are like rock solid, no one can hack through? I'm a little gun shy putting all of my passwords in one app.
That's such a huge conversation to have at this very moment.
Oh, okay.
The first answer is you need a password manager. You need, everybody write this down, you need a unique, unguessable password for every place you register. Unique. You cannot reuse them ever in any capacity. And they have to be complicated. They can't be 8 letters and they can't be some pattern that you know. You have to have a unique, unguessable password for every single site. Very few of us, except Sheldon Cooper, and he's retired from the original TV show, Big Bang Theory. Very few of us can keep track of every single one if you have a unique one, because the average number of logins is between 70 and 170 or something. Huge numbers, huge numbers of things. So you need a password manager. You need a trusted place. Are they safe 100%? Nope. Nothing is safe 100%. Are they safer than your elaborate sticky note system around your main monitor? Yep.
Yeah.
Or that cleverly disguised software spreadsheet that's called passwords. Right. Much safer. Or some of you save them in your address book. The bad guys know that. So you need one. Is it safe 100%? Nope. But almost every tech guru I've ever talked to, except for one, my eye just twitched because I don't want to lie, but I don't really trust his advice anyway. Okay, so one guy says don't use them, whatever. But you need one of the top 5, right? Like I use LastPass because I've used it for a long time. It's not necessarily, it's not always the best one in the top 5, but it's always in the top 5. LastPass, Keeper, Secure, M as in man secure, Dashlane, RoboForm, 1Password. Those kind of things work. Now, setting that aside, here is what's happening as of December of last year. Microsoft, Google, and Apple signed a pact to create a standard for password ubiquitousness. Not really the right word. But Apple is the first one to make a move on it, and that was with their latest operating system. We're doing this in October. The operating system upgrade, I think, was August. So it's very new. And what this is going to do is Apple's calling it a passkey. I don't know if the other two will. It is going to take away the need for passwords. It'll all be biometrically or some other verifiedly way. The problem is that only a few sites are adopting that as of right now. And I don't think it's going to be gone for the next 5 years because you've got so many different sites. But in the future, not very far away, we are not going to have 1,000 passwords to remember. We're going to have a few things to remember. And they're all going to be controlled by our face and our fingerprint and other biometrics and in other different secure ways. So 2-factor authentication comes with, that's where you verify yourself as something you know, i.e. a password, something you have, i.e. another device, or something you are, meaning biometrics, and using 2 of the 3 to verify. But all those are changing a little bit when we're getting into this different category of standardization of passwords. So all that is to say, yep, use a password manager. Do not argue with me unless you can, off the top of your head, remember 12 plus characters with all kinds of letters for 70 plus sites.
Right.
You need to have one. And then beyond that, keep an eye on the big changes. Microsoft just put their whole system into that kind of biometric thing where you no longer have to do password for here and password for there and all these different parts of the Microsoft infrastructure. They are all kind of coming into play, and that's where they're moving.
I long for the day before passwords. I mean, I can't even buy a pair of shoes without a password. It's so annoying. Yeah. What do you think about anytime you sign on, like on your computer, and then Google or Apple says, would you like us to save your password for you? What do you think of those sites?
I have mixed feelings. So 4 years ago, 5 years ago, those were very insecure because they weren't locked down like a regular password manager was. And they got a lot of heat. So almost all of them, Safari, Chrome, Windows, they all have better layers. Google has found that even though they let you save passwords, you're still reusing the same ones. And then it'll pop up and say, hey, that's reused. Hey, you're in trouble. And you're like, oh, whatever, click. I mean, they have statistics on the fact that we ignore those warnings. So you can do it as long as still you're doing unique, unguessable passwords for every site you visit. They are much more secure. In addition to that, another thing that has happened in the last little bit, you know how it says you can sign on with Google and you can sign on with Facebook and things?
Yeah.
It used to be that my same email address that I would do that would be associated with the new site and they can see it. That is no longer the case. They create, for the most part, and I'm not 100% sure about all the minutia, but they create individual, anonymized, I'm just going to mess that up on purpose.
That's fine.
Emails.
I can't say brewery. I sound like a schnauzer trying to talk to a human, but
brewery. Yeah. And the Bruins, like my Bruins.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't. Bruins. The anonymized things have given me more confidence into signing in via Facebook and signing in via Google because I never used to do that.
Right. I didn't trust them. I don't trust anybody. I have trust issues. So I have all different passwords for everything and they're very complicated. And so I won't write them down because I think someone else is going to find this. So if I ever get hit in the head, it's over. You know, no one's going to be able to find this thing. So,
well, I have given you the directive that you have to have a password manager and you must listen to me. You are welcome to give me a rule that I must listen to and that I may or may not, but that is my rule for you and for your followers.
All right. I read about employers installing apps that track employees. Is there an app that can block the employers from tracking you? Is there like an anti-app app?
Probably, you know, there's so much software out there like this. Probably. If your employer has trust issues, and a lot of them do, there are ways to game that system a little bit. There are mouse wigglers.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, there are mouse wigglers, but the bigger picture is, why is your employer so distrustful? How can you and your employer come to a level of understanding that, yep, you're going to check Facebook at work, but that's part of who you are in your workflow. This is a whole part to me of the resetting of what a job is that was accelerated by COVID. That's like, okay, I have tasks. Turns out I can finish those in an hour and a half. Yet I'm at work all day doing things. And I don't know what those things are because I have been able to do this. So I think we're going to see, as we go forward and see this kind of monitoring thing kind of backfire on employers and employees, we're going to see a redefinition, a new definition of what work is and what work looks like and what a good level of work is for workers. As Gen Z come in, and the next generation is going to be the alpha generation, I just was reading about.
What? Why are they alphas?
Well, they were born after the beginning of the millennium.
Oh, so it starts over again?
Yeah. So they were born, in the 2000s. They were born like post things. I don't know. They're calling them the alpha generation. Okay. So, and they start all over, right? I'm Gen X. We're forgotten about
I'm
all
Gen
the
X
time.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, who? I think that that's going to be a new definition of what work is.
Uh-huh.
And a new definition of what a work day is and what true dedication is. I remember I didn't know this. Once upon a time, I had a job. I found out that they were monitoring us and they didn't tell us. And I was like, that's very interesting. Why would you care? Like, if I go check things during the day, why would you care? Why would you care?
Well, and a human, from what I understand, really only has about 3 hours of good output. And, we're daydreaming, we have to have these breaks and all that kind of stuff. And then I read somewhere else that if we're learning something new, it's actually better to learn in the evening than during the day. And that's crazy when you think all the kids are in school, during the daytime, but that apparently our brains are more relaxed and more open to learning new skills in the evening. All of that time needs to be reworked so that we can be more effective.
And I think we're going to have more people reworking that because Gen Z is not going to work. They're just not putting up with it. There's some TikToks about Gen Zers who are absolutely just totally outraged that an employer wants them to come into the office for the second interview rather than doing it by Zoom. Why are you wasting my time? It's like, what do you mean? That's how it's done. And Gen Z is like, no, it's not very helpful.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be how it's done. So I find that interesting, in seeing where people are going with this is going to be even more interesting, I think.
So I want to move over to these apps. I mean, you have a book with, you said, over 400, sounds like close to 500 apps in it. So I'm sure there's some apps that absolutely delight you and surprise you and you just love. So I'd like to go over some of those and then maybe talk about some Halloween apps. So what do you want to share?
So this book just came out, right? And normally my books are solid for 2 years or even longer. Like,
what do you mean they're solid for 2 years?
The things in them you can count on to be still around, even if they change pricing structures or something and added features, which they always do. You can count on them still being around and them being the valid top concept of what we're doing. I don't think I can write another book because things are changing so quickly. It's insane. And a huge example is the ubiquitousness. I messed it up both times, but I'm saying it again.
That's something I would do. So go right ahead. We
That
know what
is
you're
the
saying.
word of the month for me, or the word of the day that I will now not use anymore. But
it's everywhere and stuff. Just say that.
Everywhere and stuff. What's happening is this AI generation, I think they call it generative technology. And this is where you put in a few words and it writes a blog post for you. You put in a few words, a few details, and it draws an illustration for you.
Yeah.
Now, Facebook just released, you put in a few words. It's not out for public use yet. Facebook and Google did one. You put in a few words and it makes a movie for you.
What?
Yes. And generative technology, generative AI, and it's all over the place right now. And it was just beginning when I wrote that book. A lot of it came from something called neural language processing, NLP, an AI platform that was released to the world in its biggest format in May of 2020, when we were a little distracted with making banana bread. Remember those days? So May of 2020, OpenAI came out with a model called GPT-3, which was trained on absorbing about 10% of the internet. And if you think about 10% of the internet, that is a data set that has never been processed that way. And it taught itself how to, or they taught it how to write from that. And so that's why you can put in a few facts and it writes it for you. It codes it for you just by you talking in natural language processing. You talk in your natural language, it translates that into code, words, pictures, video. And those things were kind of out of our reach. So that was May of 2020. By January of 2021, we had maybe 5 companies that were offering that, the writing part of it, universally. Then switched to, that was January of 2021, switched to maybe May of 2022. For one thing, we probably have 100 companies who are doing a few words to written copy for you. And now you have at least 25 strong companies who are doing the text to image. So I don't know about you, but I have spent, like, this graphic that I'm in right now, if you're just listening to this, it's just a monitor with an orange background. Well, I wanted to find the perfect monitor with an orange background. So I looked for, I don't know, 4 hours. I have some of that monitoring stuff on my computer. And I have literally spent 4 to 6 hours looking for the perfect graphic in stock images. And that's dumb because I have a life. Oh, wait, no, I don't have a life. I have a job. I do it because I want the most perfect thing. Well, with AI, you can just describe the most perfect thing and get it. And so that is changing everything. So these are the kind of things that are coming up. DALL-E, DALL little dot E2 is the one from OpenAI. So that was kind of the first one that became commercial. There's one called Stable Diffusion. There's one Midjourney. There are several major platforms.
Yeah, and Midjourney's on the Discord site, right?
Yep.
So I was going to mess around with that. It's a little intimidating if you don't know what you're doing, but
it is.
Yeah,
Midjourney confuses me. Plus, the Midjourney one is a lot of fantasy looks, like dragons and girls in fields with, fire. But I don't know. It's very fantasy looking for me. And then
it's because it's a bunch of gamers on there.
Yes. Yeah. Canva, good old Canva, just integrated it into its main product.
Did it really? I love Canva.
This happened maybe a month ago. They released it during their first ever product live thing. I actually watched the live stream and I was like, because what had happened was I was on Canva's site, like researching something, and I was looking in their terms and conditions. I don't exactly know why I was there, but I saw something, a term and condition for the use of what they're calling magic pictures. And I'm like, they don't have magic pictures. Why would they have a terms and condition about using magic pictures? And then I scroll back and they had just added it because they were adding this new feature that was kind of behind the scenes. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in the know. I'm in the know in advance.
Oh, well, from what I saw on Discord, you create the image, but then others can use it as well. So it's open source unless you're paying, I think, like $600 a year. Then anything you create with the AI is yours, and it's not a file that other people can build upon. So I wonder if that's what they're going to do with Canva, if this is something you own and you have the copyright for, or if that just becomes this open source that everyone gets to use. Do you know offhand?
Yeah. So Campbell is using Stable Diffusion, which is a different setup than Midjourney's. So Midjourney is one platform. Stable Diffusion is another. You can go straight to Stable Diffusion and use it there. It's called Dream Studio, I think. I've got it bookmarked here. So Stable Diffusion has one. DALL-E 2 has one, and some of it you can get free and some of it you got to buy some credits. There's one called Crayon, Craiyon, that is 100% free. It's not as advanced. It was a knockoff of DALL-E 2. Boy, there are just so many resources right now. I can't even name them. I was trying to make a list the other day. A friend of mine, Terry
hold on. Do you think the AI is going to be able to make jokes? Because everyone has said, oh, AI can't be creative. But then there was the AI that won that art contest not that long ago. I mean, granted, it's AI, but it's a human putting in the keywords and telling it what to do. I mean, I have an active imagination. I've just never been able to draw. So I find that fascinating that I could think of something and then the computer uses the skills to actually bring it to life. I mean, I think that there's going to be a lot of other people entering the creative space that weren't able to before, that perhaps had a really active imagination, but just weren't able to draw or paint. But what about jokes?
Jokes are already happening with the natural language processing writing tools. And that's the one I actually went to one of their offices in Austin because I was like, this can't be happening. And it was happening. You just put in a few words, it'll write a whole blog post for you, like write it. But it'll also do jokes, and it'll also do songs, and it'll also do scripts, and it'll also do conversations. And
are they good?
Yes. And it can be kind of sarcastic. Like I always do a sample of in the sessions that I teach. I'm like, okay, somebody give me something that's going on. And then I say, let's do a sarcastic point of view. And it'll do things like one of them was, for a golf tournament, maybe we're writing copy for a golf tournament to get people to come. And I'll use a sarcastic point of view. Do you like small balls and beer? It's sarcastic. It's
the computer
funny.
did that?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Hashtag helpful, but creepy.
Yeah. That's really creepy. Okay. So let's talk about the apps that people could use that perhaps are not that tech savvy, but it might really change their life in a good way, help them organize. What do you have?
Well, we've got some basic things. One of the things that I've realized in the past couple of years is that not everybody's like me. I know.
I don't think anyone's like you, Beth.
Who knew? Like, I thought everybody was just so into this, and they're like, no, we have lives. So I realized that, and I realized that people sometimes have a resistance to technology that maybe, I always talk about your subconscious technology psychology. And some of the things that I try out, nobody else would ever use, and I go at things like I am trying to find cool tools, and then I'll work backwards and find a problem they solve.
Okay.
Right. So I encourage people to not do that. I say, what problem do you have? Maybe you don't even know you're having it. Do you think other people do better than you do? Or do you think other people have less of a problem for you than you do?
Okay.
So come at it from, hey, my email's out of control, and move to what can help my email.
That's a great one. Most people have out of control email boxes. So what app could they use that would act as a bouncer or delete emails or organize it for them? Is there something like that?
Absolutely. There are all kinds of things like that. One of the ones that I talk about a lot is called unroll.me.
Okay.
unroll.me. Now, it's got some privacy issues, so you got to read the fine print because it uses aggregate data from your email for your purchases to sell to people. So that's how their company is where we get the estimates for how many iPhones were sold, because they look at the receipts coming into these things. But what it does, and Google has some like it too, is it goes into your email and looks at all your subscriptions. There's a difference in the email world between spam and bacon, just like real life. Spam is anything we don't want.
Yeah.
We know what spam is. It's a legislative update you no longer need, or a really good offer for a Nigerian prince. Bacon is stuff we want, but we can't have it every day. It's the notifications that on LinkedIn that somebody has looked at your profile. It's the notifications from Facebook. It's the legislative update you do want to read, or the stuff from your kid's school about what the new, lunch menu is going to be. I don't have children, so I don't really know what happens at schools. But
yeah, I don't have any children that I know of.
Yeah. Awesome. But unroll.me will put all those subscriptions, not the spam that you're not supposed to click on, but all of them in a list. Have you ever walked past a Bed Bath & Beyond and gotten on their list? Like some of them you just don't even know. And so it puts them all in a row, and then you can go down and click unsubscribe, 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 and you're gone. And then you can take the ones you still want to keep an eye on and put them in one digested email that comes once a day rather than 15 a day. And you're like, oh, okay, another notification. You just end up with a whole bunch that you don't even care enough to delete, or you end up with spending all day long just clearing out these little notifications. Well, it pulls them all in at the same time and puts them in your inbox in one email. That is one that immediately you could unsubscribe from a whole bunch of things you don't want, and then put a whole bunch of things together.
And how much does that cost?
That's free.
Because they sell your information.
They sell your information. Exactly. Here's a free one, though, that I think everybody should stop and think about is keyboard shortcuts. Okay. There was a little math nerdy group decided to do figure out how much time you spent if you're not using keyboard shortcuts. And they figured that it's like 2 seconds an hour that you would save, but that ends up being 8 days a year. Yeah, no, they have the calculator thing, but several days a year that you are wasting by not using keyboard shortcuts.
Okay, so what's a good keyboard shortcut that people should use?
When you are in a browser, Command or Control, depending on your platform, T will give you a tab, but Control Shift T will bring back the tab you just closed accidentally that you have to go now find. You just accidentally closed one, and then you're like, oh. Control N will give you a in a browser another window. Open up a whole other window for your browser. Control Shift N will open up the incognito browser. Have you ever gotten stuck somewhere and you're like, I have to clear my cache, whatever the hell clear my cache is, and then you go in and you have to find the space to clear your cache? Well, Shift Command R will refresh the page. Shift Command R will clear the cache on that page. So you don't have to do the whole thing and then log into all your things.
I love that. Oftentimes I'm having a conversation with somebody and we're talking about something a little random, and then someone will say, look that up because we need some clarification. I'm like, I just don't want the internet. I don't want the algorithm to know I'm looking this up. It's, how many fart facts do I want the algorithm to know that I am searching for? So how do we find certain information without winding up, a part of the algorithm? How do we have a little more privacy?
In all of the browsers these days, there are privacy settings that you can set to not allow it to use those for commercial and use those for other things. Now, there are all these rumors about, I've got my Amazon device right there, and they're like, you're going to talk about walnuts for the first time in 17 years, and all of a sudden you're going to see a walnut ad.
Yep.
So I use ad blockers all the time, and that helps out so much because I don't have to, like right now on this page, there are 44 different things being blocked.
So you have little black squares all over where you don't see the ad?
No, it just is white. It just doesn't show up. And so some things are affected by that and some things aren't. I use one called Ad Block Plus, I think.
As a consumer, I love that kind of stuff. As a past marketer, I hate that.
One of the things about blocking all these things about what you're actually talking about is that you're still going to get ads, people, but they're not going to be appropriate. So I get vasectomy clinic ads.
That's appropriate. Why not?
Yes. And I haven't needed one in quite some time. So, and I get hot rod car ad, get a job in porn ads or whatever.
Well, see, you'd be missing out on all that important information.
Yes. And now I'm going to get a job in porn ad after this podcast.
All right. Well, let me know how that works out. It's time for the pet peeve segment. Everyone has those little things that annoy them, but we rarely mention them when we get to know someone. What are your pet peeves?
In general, the biggest one is the Oxford comma.
You hate it?
I hate it. I'm a journalist. I grew up with, that was my training in college, and I had a college professor who was one of the best teachers I've ever had. And he had a stamp that was UGH, UGH, UGH. And he would just stamp it all over your page like UGH, UGH, UGH. And one of the things is the Oxford comma doesn't exist. Now, I gave a man my phone number once in an online chat room because he used a semicolon correctly. So I take my punctuation very seriously. But the Oxford comma hurts my feelings. I don't think we need it. And if you don't know what the Oxford comma is, it's I went to the store to buy eggs, comma, bacon, comma, and more bacon. That second comma to me is not necessary. However, there was a Maine dairy that was sued in 2007, I think. And they had to pay $10 million because they had left out a comma, the Oxford comma, that would have clarified on their contract with their employees what something meant. And the judge said, because there's not a comma there, you lose. So it could cost me $10 million, but the Oxford comma, no.
A friend of mine used to work for the New York Times, and he said that the reason why people in journalism are told not to use the Oxford comma is that it saves space and therefore saved paper in the newspaper. And that's where it all came from, that those little commas added up. I'm like, that is very interesting. Meanwhile, you need to look up a song by Vampire Weekend called Who Gives a Fuck About the Oxford Comma?
Probably love that. Yep.
It's a great song. It has a little funky beat to it and it's fantastic. Check that out. And thirdly, if you've ever used the Grammarly app is all about the Oxford comma. Loves it.
I know. And I keep telling it, you're wrong. And I'm going to stick to it. And it's like, oh no, you need to add it. I'm like, no, you don't. Somewhere, in fact, in my analysis of it and my review of it, I said that is a problem. And I think somewhere in there deep, you can change it. It hurts my feelings.
I was wondering why they don't have an easy toggle switch for Oxford comma or not, because it's a great app, I think, for the most part.
Yes. AP style book is what I use, and it doesn't let you do the Oxford comma. So there.
All right. So that's a good app that a lot of people might not know about.
Grammarly. Yep. And that uses AI, and it's got a lot more writing suggestions in it now because of that.
Yeah. What were you afraid of as a child? And what are you afraid of now?
Lady Elaine from Mr. Rogers or Captain Kangaroo lived under my bed. And I knew it. She was this little puppet.
She was scary. All I remember is sort of that waxy porcelain face. I had just one emotion.
Yes.
And the emotion didn't change.
No.
And then I want to think it was like a grayish dress or something.
Yeah, she was very scary. And she lived under my bed. I was pretty sure of it. She had a cauldron. And so I couldn't dangle my feet by the bed. And this continued unconsciously until my late teens, like 19. When I got out of the bed, I would not dangle. I would take my feet and not leap, because I'm not a leaper, but I would take my feet and like get a foot away from the bed so that she couldn't get me.
And then what are you afraid of now?
Well, this is a little bit off color, but I'm serious about this. It's sex dolls, AI sex dolls. I'm not fearful of them for them coming alive and living under my bed. I'm fearful of them about what they're doing in our society and how they're being literally used and where they're going, what that does to humankind, to relationships, to, our relationship with women as a whole. And I mean, it's literal objectification of women, and they're getting really good. They have a resist mode, or I'm not sure if they actually had it. They talked about having a resist mode, which means that the sex doll that you were going to have sex with was going to resist your advances. And we all know what that translates to. And I just, every time I think about this and I look into it, I'm alarmed and I'm scared.
Oh, that is awful. I read somewhere, I think it started in Germany, that they had a bordello. So instead of a bordello, you just rent a doll. And they asked these men, they're like, why are you using a doll instead of like a human prostitute? And they all said the same kind of thing. Like, well, I don't have to talk to her. And I also don't have to worry if she's enjoying herself. And it's just better that way. And this bordello became so popular, they've opened up more. And I think that is indicative of an issue in society where people are not able to connect with each other. And that is not going to help. That's going to make it worse, because you need to be pushed in the opposite direction of that.
You would think, but the fact that artificial intelligence is getting so much better and they're using more in these tools. Now, I just watched a TV show that was very interesting. Made for Love, I think was the name of it. It wasn't about sex dolls, but it had a sex doll in it. It was very clever. It was about a woman who was kidnapped, got married to a guy who was very, very wealthy and the head of tech, and he put her in this fake world and wouldn't let her out. And then she escaped and all that kind of stuff. Very good show. But her dad had a sex doll, and it was a companion for him, a non-stressful companion for him that he treated like a human being. And he had cancer, and so he didn't want to get involved with real people. And this was a way for him to back off.
It could be therapeutic and be a bridge to bring somebody some comfort. At the same time, it does feel like it's pushing people away from connecting. And I read somewhere they were talking about how they might need to create some rights for these robots.
Yeah, it's that scares me. So that's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah. Rounding this out on a positive note, what are you looking forward to in the future?
I'm very much looking forward to where this generative technology that I was talking about is going, and how that's going to reshape creativity, who's going to be an artist, who's going to figure out this and be able to use it. I'm interested to see where it goes, and how we can use it without it being just clutter and noise and words that are created and images that are created that are just dumped. I'm just fascinated by this.
And now it's time for the very interesting game show. This isn't trivia. Throw accuracy out the window and give me your most ridiculous and creative answers instead. And let's see if you can come up with the most interesting answer. Are you ready? These are questions from the Halloween edition of the very interesting game. And starting off with question number 1. What do zombies do for fun when they're not busy hunting for food or eating?
They are playing as actors in the app called Zombies Run. It's an activity app. It's like a run walk app. You get these missions and zombies are chasing you. So there's a narrative and a storyline, and every day you add to it while you're walking or working out or what have you. And it's all integrated. And Zombies Run has been around for a while. It is still a classic.
I love that. Right? If you could cast a spell, what would it do?
Create the ultimate app that brings together so many of these little things that we like to-do app and email app and a creativity app and all these things that we now have to have 75 apps for. Mm-hmm. How could I go and have this thing that would keep us together? Oh, and I have a second part of this.
Okay.
Not only us as professionals, but senior care and helping out with senior care and understanding how to bring things together to help our seniors feel connected to the world and have us be connected to them and understand how they're doing. It's something I think about all the time. And if fix things technology-wise, those are the two things I would fix.
Yeah, I can see that. And it's so important to be able to age in place.
Yes.
And to be able to use technology to do that, I think is critical.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Then question number 3, the ceilings of front porches are painted haint blue to prevent evil spirits from entering the home. What color would you paint on your front door, and what would you want it to keep out?
Well, there's a color called drunk tank pink that they paint in drunk tanks. It's a pink color to calm them down, but that's not what I would do. I would go to, there are several apps like this, but there's one called Project Color from the Home Depot. And you can take a picture of anything and then you can choose a color and see it in real time. You don't even have to take a picture. You see it in real time and you can choose whatever color you want. And that's how I would choose them. And why I would choose them is I change my mind every day. So it would have to be every day a new color. That's what I would use.
So that app allows you to see what color would look really good in the room.
This on my desk here, this little bubbly, and what color pink is that? And what color orange is that? And that kind of thing. It'll analyze it and help you find those and make your own, but it'll also paint your room for you in augmented reality. And that's so much fun.
I love that. Too often, I'd pick paint and you have to put a little bit on the wall.
Let me just
bigger on the wall. All right, let's just do the whole wall. I don't like that. Let's do a different color. Yeah. I heard in the future, though, paint will have little nanobots in it and you could just program the wall to change colors.
Oh,
yeah.
I can see that happening. I can see that price tag too.
Yeah, big time. And I think you could also put the nanobots in your mouth and it prevents cavities. But then what does it do when it's bored and it's on a break? Where else is it going to go? What's it going to do?
It reports back to Bill Gates. I think that's where that technology comes
Is that what it does? You sneeze or something and then nanobots leave?
Yeah.
All right. Question number 4. Crossing the Streams was made up during the filming of the movie Ghostbusters. What have you improvised on the spot to accomplish something or get out of trouble?
Well, believe it or not, I have a technology answer for this one too.
To get out of trouble?
To get out of trouble. So there are tools that bring multiple apps together. Remember a few minutes ago, I said I would like to have the app that rules them all and make it so we don't have to cobble things together. Well, there are apps that cobble things together. There's one called Zapier. There's one called Iftitata. There are a number of them that are intrinsic, like Apple. Apple has some shortcuts. Microsoft has some. But you can take little things and make, if this happens over here, then that happens. And here's the trouble that I got out of with that. One of my managers went on maternity leave, and instead of hiring somebody in her stead, I decided to take over, which is never a good idea. But I found out that when we were signing a contract with anybody, we would have to go in and put the information in 3 different areas. After they sign the contract, and then send 3 different people different pieces of information every single time, so that everybody had what they needed and it was all in the places we needed to see it. Well, I said no. So I set up a series of recipes that said, when a contract is signed, populate these things over here and send emails to these people with these pieces of information for customized for each one, so that we didn't have to spend 20 minutes redoing everything. And of course, you know, if you're doing something and the cat vomits on the carpet and you have to take a break, well, then you got to go back and do that. And then do you forget stuff and things like that. So putting together and putting these, using these app automators together made a process that was getting us into trouble when it was being done manually.
Oh, wow. It's really neat. For the 5th question, on Michael Jackson's song Thriller, Vincent Price was paid less than $1,000 for his part, which was recorded in only 2 takes, whose voice could completely change the feel of that song, and demonstrations are encouraged.
I'm going to go with Darth Vader. And here's why. Because artificial intelligence is now allowing actors, like, who is Darth Vader?
James Earl Jones.
James Earl Jones. So James Earl Jones just gave Star Wars the rights to his voice so they can create it again, because artificial intelligence is making voice recognition and voice cloning so good that James Earl Jones does not have to be there and say things for them to get him to say things. James Earl Jones was one of the first people. There was a rumor that Bruce Willis just gave away his rights, but that's not true. He negotiated with this company, allows actors to recreate themselves, voice and body, to be in like a commercial without being in the commercial. They have the rights to the AI version of them, the twin of them in there. You can take voices that exist and replicate them. I mean, I've got a clone of my voice with a $200 tool that I use.
What tool is that?
This one's called Descript, and it's the coolest thing ever, except for all the other cool things ever. I was using it actually today to do this video that I'm doing for a new session. And you import your video, and then you can edit it by just deleting the words, because it transcribes it, and you can just delete the words and that edits the actual video. But then it also lets you cross out the words and put an overdub of your cloned voice in there.
Oh, so if you mispronounced a word, it will then pronounce it correctly using your voice?
Using my voice. Or I say...
Or a different word choice, perhaps?
Yep. If I say, we can't wait to see you in March, and we're actually seeing you in May, I can change that and make it say May.
And then you don't have to re-record.
Correct.
Oh,
Crazy.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound like it's in a different pitch, or it was dropped in as another recording.
You have to finesse it and play around with it and things like that. I've found if it's very short, it's fine. But I mostly use it to show people that it exists.
I watched a documentary about Andy Warhol, and it was all clips from his diary, but it was all read using AI. He didn't read his diary, but AI did, using his voice. And there were some times it was a little flat, but then I thought, well, maybe that's how Andy Warhol really talked, because he was a little monotone at times. Hard to say. I saw something, I want to say it was Black Mirror, and they might actually be doing this now, where let's say you lose a loved one, then they can allow you to talk to them afterwards. And they were even saying like history classes, you could talk to like George Washington or something along those lines. Obviously, they don't have recordings of George Washington, but you would be able to do that with other people that we have voice recordings of.
Yep, Amazon Echo, and I can't say her name because she's right there. She gets a little jumpy. Amazon Echo, though, was doing something that I think colloquially we called it a dead grandma voice.
I don't know if that's good either. Did you see that Black Mirror episode?
I saw that Black Mirror, and then of course the show Upload has some of that, where you upload you're dead or dying, and you upload your consciousness, and then that consciousness can interact. I watch a lot of TV also, by the way, just for work.
You need to be on top of everything there. Okay. So now the last question of the day, which is asked on every episode, what should have been invented by now?
Actual driverless cars. We are so close. We keep saying we're close. We're not very close. And we have some, but it's just not there, and they keep on coming up with challenges. I think it's coming, but it's like it's not coming.
I think the reason why it's not coming, it's a big old conspiracy, because there's too much tied to the economy with people driving, and to just suddenly not have them drive anymore. I mean, just, you know, think about all the years I was in auto insurance. You would now be insuring like the manufacturer. Well, then that means the manufacturer can just offer their own insurance, which is what they've always wanted to do. So that would cut out so many things. And then also they're projecting that self-driving vehicles will save lives. Right. But at the same time, people that are on the waiting list for organ donations, that's a huge source of organ donations. So you're saving lives on this side of the equation, but on the other side, you're not. So they actually need to find other ways to grow organs, because you're not going to be able to get them from these car accidents. But then also, too, there will be times when the vehicle cannot avoid an accident. So now it has to decide, do I kill the people that are in my car or the other people in the other car? And it has to make that decision. So then are you going to wind up buying a vehicle that no matter what saves your life over somebody else's? And what are the parameters that you put in place? Like, what if you just killed a 3-year-old so that you could live? And that's the kind of stuff no one really wants to address yet. And I think that's why it's actually slowed things down. I think we could all be in those self-driving cars otherwise. I just sort of threw up on you there.
These are the discussions we should all be having. Great way to end it.
How can people get in touch with you?
I am Beth at yournerdybestfriend.com, or believe it or not, my site is yournerdybestfriend.com. I love to hear from people about their ideas.
All right. And you do consulting as well as speaking, correct?
Yes. I call it tech therapy more than consulting. Yeah. I like to help people really get things done rather than just hear about ideas.
Great. And then do you have any final words of wisdom for people that I would say are overwhelmed by tech? How do they find what's new without being overwhelmed by it?
Think about those problems you're having and move forward. Don't start with the technology itself and move backwards. Think about what's going on in your world. Some things, it ain't broke, don't fix it. But some other things are really holding you back and really frustrating you. And think about those and then find the way to find a solution for that.
I love that. That's great advice. Thank you so much, Beth. It has been absolutely wonderful having you on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. And I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah. And for everyone else, go forward, my friends. Be interesting. What about App Shaker?
Oh, shake your app maker.
Yeah.
Appendectomy. No. You're closer than I am.